So, this is about introspection, and I guess living life versus thinking about life, which are not necessarily things that are combative to one another, but there's a balance there. And I think that I have talked about this in the vlog before, probably somewhere in like a behind the curtains type of episode, where I discuss kind of what my learnings have been or changes or thoughts based on just the recording process of vlogging and how that's affected me in my daily life and how my life affects the vlogs and all that stuff. I haven't done one of those in a long time because I just haven't felt the need to. Obviously, earlier on, there were way more changes that I could see and more things happening and more things to note and whatever. And I've obviously settled into, after 2 full years, like a routine. There's been changes for sure on how I operate and how, things are much different now than they were then. But this is one of those areas I wanted to talk about for a long time that I just didn't get around to because, again, I've touched on it. It's been sprinkled a little bit here, a little bit there, just because introspection is just a certain way that I operate and live on a daily basis. So I've talked about it, and it's part of me, and if you've watched even a quarter of the vlogs, you would know that. Or maybe you don't have to watch any of them, and you just know me enough that you know that. Anyway, but also it got brought to the forefront again because of a podcast I was listening to where somebody was talking to a coworker, and they realized, like, this person doesn't think the way I do. They don't have, like, an introspective, like, regularity, I guess. And when they were put into positions to, think about certain things, they're like, what, you don't think about that? Or like, one of the examples was, what do you think about at the grocery store? Which we'll get back to in a second. This is also loosely related to something else that I've wanted to talk about for a long time and still haven't felt the need, or I don't know. I've been putting it off for a long time because it has to do with ignorance is bliss and a certain amount of intelligence and what that means and how it affects me personally and how I feel about it. But it just seems like it seems really pompous and arrogant and weird. So I've been waiting and sitting on it, even though I know my intention and I know completely what I'm talking about. And it's just like more factually based than it is whatever. Anyway, this is loosely related to that because there are some burdens by being introspective, I believe. Or deeply introspective or over introspective and over analyzing things that come along with anxiety for some people, and some people swing the other way and they try to combat that by not thinking about these things at all, and then that comes back to possibly bite you later. Anyway, so it's about introspection. It's about living life and thinking about life and those things, because introspection to me is thinking about the life you are living and thinking about life around you. Anyway, so this podcast, it was This American Life, and there's just a section of it this past week where these coworkers were talking, and the one was like, what do you think about when you go to the grocery store? And they're just like, nothing. Like, I think, like, I'm shopping, that's it. Like, it doesn't, like, it doesn't enter into their mind. Like, nothing else enters into their mind about, like, the details about what they're shopping for, or do I really need this? Do I have that? What if this is blah, blah, blah? Like, nothing. It's just kind of like, I'm just shopping right now, and it's kind of like having an empty head, and it's just, like, the weirdest thing to think about for me, because there are times where even, like, I'm going to be doing something, and, like, let's say reading a book, and depending on what's happening in my self, in my body, in my emotional mental state, reading becomes, I don't know what to call it, passive reading. I'll like read a page or read half a page or a paragraph and realize I didn't actually actively read anything. Like my brain processed words without understanding them. I don't remember anything that I just read because other thoughts are entering into my head instead. That happens all the time. And part of the reason it happens to me at random intervals is maybe because I don't take enough time to let it happen naturally, which I've talked about before lots with, like, listening to podcasts all the time. Because music is a little more passive and set back, where I can enjoy it like very fully, and also there's room there for my thoughts to go in and out. And I don't do that anymore. I listen to podcasts way more than music, and because I do that, I don't have as much natural time for these thoughts to enter and exit naturally, and I need to work on that and listen to music more often, because complete silence. I mean, I could also, I need to focus on meditating more as well, which is me trying to like not focus on thoughts, but they'll come and go, and that's okay. Anyway, they had another example, and I don't remember what it was, but at one point, this woman who doesn't, there were two female coworkers, and one was incredibly introspective, and the other one, like I said, was just not at all, and just didn't know for a long time that she was different until like her 20s, and an incident happened where she was reading a book, I guess, and like a character died, and she had a significant other there at the time, and he was like, "What's going on?" And she was like, "This character just died, and like it made me start thinking about my grandparents, and they're gonna die, and I'm gonna die," and it was like, okay, like, yep, that's what happens. Like, I get really anxious about mortality, as you probably already know. It's like a huge trigger for my anxiety. But the thing is that I don't like to dwell on it, because I also am like, what's the point in dwelling on it? I don't know what's going to happen when I die, for one thing, so it's like, I don't believe I can know in the definition of the word know, because some people think they can know things through faith, but I mean, that's it. Having faith in something is great. Knowing something to me is a little different. I mean, you could talk about faith versus science or whatever, but I mean, some people say I know through faith, which I can try to respect. But in this regard, there's no point in me trying to dwell on this and really figure it out and try to be okay with it. Like, trying to accept it is like really difficult to do as an active thing for me, accepting death. I had a line that I wrote a couple months ago that I really, really liked, and it was, if I wanted to accept the truth of things, I wouldn't be an artist. And, I mean, you can take that in a lot of different ways, but I don't accept the truth of things a lot of time. I want to, I mean, there's things that have nothing to do with being an artist at times. I want to prolong the truth of things. I want to fully figure out the truth of things too. But it's also why sometimes I prolong figuring things out, because I want to figure them out in a certain order or way, or it be natural, or does it really know 500% like know absolutely that this is the right thing or this is the wrong thing or whatever before I make decisions. Anyway, I spend more time being introspective, and I don't not like that, but I think, like, to me, here's this thing of living life versus, oh, sorry, her significant other in this example said, like, maybe if you actually spent more time thinking about these things semi-regularly, if they crossed your mind, then it wouldn't hit you all at once, and you wouldn't have, like, a panic attack about it. And that's kind of when she realized, like, what do you mean people think about this stuff? Like, yeah, people, I mean, she was reading a book, I believe it was a book, or maybe she was watching a show. Either way, like, she was entangled in a world of what I believe was fiction, and this thing happened, like, so obviously she takes in media, like, it's not like she just sits there and stares at the wall, right? She lives a life, she does things, she works. By all accounts from this other coworker, she's an intelligent person, but doesn't have any introspection. And that's been something to wrestle with for me, is intelligent people who have no method of introspection, or they have a method of it because they have a mind, but it doesn't naturally go to those places. And can you unnaturally go to that place? I don't know. It's one of those things that, can you force yourself to reflect on things? I would hope so. I mean, I can force myself to reflect on things deeper, and I can do that hard work, or maybe it's not a good time and I do it. Like, I unnaturally reflect as well. Like, I'm like, this is a time where I should sit and write about this or think about this or do what I'm doing now. Like, by talking about this right now, it is not a necessarily natural state of introspection. I am voicing these things and doing some external processing about it, and voicing, like, and using my words. So whether it be verbal or written or visual with paintings or whatever, that is just a natural state for me to be in, is take things in, process them internally as much as I mean, naturally internally, and then also unnaturally by expressing these thoughts, whether it be in a conversation with someone or like this or whatever. And I find that that's just a natural state for me to be in, and that I have been in for I don't know how long, to just experience the world this way, to be naturally introspective. It goes too far. I've talked about overanalyzing, and that's an anxious thing too, and wanting to overplan and whatever, and schedule and organize so that I can keep some order in my life, so that I feel better, and have contingency plans and things like that. So I don't have this faith that everything will just work out. It'll be fine. Like, if I had that, it would make things a lot easier if it was just intrinsically a part of me. But it is not. And that's the thing. I was thinking about this yesterday and being like, thinking about my physique and my weight and things, and how I want to work on that, and think about this balance of like, I would rather work out my mind than my body. That's obviously a priority for me. There's people that I know that are really good friends of mine that do both, that are incredibly physically fit. And I mean that, like, they're not bodybuilders and things like, that's not the end goal for them, is just to pump as much as possible and be a bodybuilder. But I mean, they are very physically fit and healthy, and they also are intelligent people that do have introspection and do thinking, reading, and processing things and whatever, right? There's obviously a balance. I mean, there's a lot of other factors too, because body chemistry and like, education is a part of it too. Like what you learned in your household early on, and this is a natural thing, I think, for both of them, that they've carried on, or they started this in like high school, if not earlier. And for me, this is like a battle that I constantly am fighting against, of like diet and exercise, and not liking where I'm at, and not doing enough to change it, and not putting enough hours in to change it. However, it doesn't, whatever. When we get into diet, like, because we're being honest, like, that doesn't take hours, that doesn't take time. I mean, it takes time for me to research some meals, and to not eat some things does not take time. Researching some stuff, which I hate doing, that would take up some time. Cooking certain things takes up some time. Buying healthier foods, unfortunately, sometimes is more expensive. Changing habits takes a long time. But I mean, yeah, when it comes to just like food that I'm putting in my body, is different than the time it would take to exercise. And I've been reintroducing exercise into my life, which has been good. It's been good for things like introspection too. That's what I'm saying. There's a balance. Like this is why like riding my bike is an amazing thing for introspection too. It gives me time where I can't. I've talked about this so many times, but like mountain biking on trails, on single tracks, and like other things that are semi-dangerous or dangerous. I have to focus on what I'm doing. There was a time where I was thinking about something else, and it was biking related. I was thinking about how something didn't get fixed, and I was really annoyed, and blah 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 blah. And the next thing I knew, I just like ate it. Like I went off the track a little bit, and just like basically in like a ditch, and just like that. There was no reason for that to happen. I wasn't focusing. So mountain biking is not only fun and physical exercise and whatever else, but I have to focus on what I am doing and remain in the present. Another reason why this conversation is coming up right now is because I've been thinking about nostalgia a lot. And I had a conversation about nostalgia very close, I think, to the beginning of these conversations. I think it was year 1, week 16. The only reason I remember that is because I looked it up. I'm like, yeah, I did talk about it, and is this conversation going to be much different if I talk about nostalgia today? But it said nostalgia and memory is a tactless device. And so I think I don't really have much to add to that, so you can check that out because it's related. But for me, nostalgia is never like a happy thing. Like that fondness always is accompanied by sadness. But anyway, on the bike, mountain biking, doing that physical thing is this weird form of introspection where like I can't focus on things that are like my mind is focused on this one thing, and it doesn't allow for like over analyzing. It doesn't allow for like bad thoughts. It just is focused on the present, and it's one of the very few activities I can do that forces me into the present. I've mentioned like reading a book. Sometimes like that's a great thing, but sometimes if I'm too emotional, I can't get into the book. If I'm emotional when I start to mountain bike, within a few minutes that kind of disappears, and it helps me process things in a way without thinking about them, if that makes sense. Um, that is a form of like living life, I guess, rather than thinking about life. And there's a balance there. They're not combative. It shouldn't be like a versus thing. But for me, I spend more time thinking about life. I mean, it's not like, oh man, all these philosophers that were thinking about life, they weren't living it and they're all obese. And like, that's not what I'm saying. There's a balance that I have yet to master because I would like to also live life. And I don't mean just spending time getting physically healthy. Um, but I mean living life as in staying more in the present. If I can be more in the present more often, I think I would have one less anxieties. But then to me, what accompanies living in the present is also thinking that everything's going to be okay all the time, or not all the time, but frequently. And I don't. I don't think that things are going to be okay. like, I have optimism and hope until something happens, and then it makes me think about things, and then depending on what happened and the severity of it and the context and everything else, then I start to not think positively and that this is going to all work out and be magical. I start thinking realistically, or I try to be realistic and not just negative. But inherently, it seems that I come across negative and pessimistic so frequently because I'm constantly thinking about things and I don't have enough just, it's going to be okay. I don't have enough of that, whatever that is. Like, I didn't get, like, I got a little sprinkle and not enough. And to train myself to just be like, everything's going to be okay. Like, I don't know how to do that. I'm trying from time to time. This week I've been trying just to be like, hey, it's going to be okay. Maybe not today or tomorrow, but things will be okay anyway. Like, this is hell right now and it sucks. But it'll be okay. And I've been trying to do that and it has been somewhat successful. But, yeah, I wanted to get to this part of living life and thinking about life. I think thinking about life too much is a burden. The whole thing of like ignorance is bliss, which I want to talk about eventually, is related because I think like if you were this person, this that was in this that podcast episode, This American Life, who doesn't think about things that much, or their method of introspection is so different than like mine, or maybe what the average is, or whatever, that they just don't have these thoughts. They're not burdened by these thoughts. They're not thinking about these things. They're just living. And to me, it's just like this weird balance because I'm like, that's not living. To me, that is robotic. That is like not, not like, to me, the joys of life are thinking about things and feeling things. And I guess there's a difference between thinking and feeling, but to me they're so closely related because I think about my feelings so much. I can't feel something without thinking about it. It's not just like a plant that reacts to stimuli because it feels things, doesn't have a conscious mind to think about what to do next. It's like a stationary thing that reacts to stimuli. You could say the same thing for a lot of animals that are just, they're maybe not stationary, but they are animated objects because they react to stimuli and what's the word I'm looking for? Primal instinct without a conscious mind to necessarily think about things the way that we understand the word think and consciousness and whatever else. Awareness of one's self and mortality in the context of a larger world. So I think there's a burden with that, and I love my burden until obviously it gets too extreme, and then I don't love it anymore, and then I'm like, man, I wish I could just let that go and just exist, and that's it. But to me, that's like a really poor existence too. Like I said, this isn't a combative thing of like living life versus thinking about life, but my balance just isn't exactly what I would like it to be. And it also makes me think critically about other people's balance, and also how much of that is something that can be controlled and trained and learned and unlearned and worked on. Because I think that I can try and do things that are against my natural self and put myself in positions to not be so introspective. It just takes a lot of time. I enjoy being introspective. I enjoy using my mind and my heart a lot, but it does not serve me well sometimes when it comes to my happiness. Or I just need to, again, I need to rewire some synapses and how they fire off in my brain and figure out how to use my natural being, my natural state in a better mode to help me and assist me in being more optimistic, hopeful, happy. We'll see you on another time.